I'm standing alone in a crowded room and we're not speaking. And I'm dying to know, is it killing you like it's killing me? Yeah. I don't know what to say since a twist of fate when it all broke down. And the story of us looks a lot like a tragedy now. Let's see here. L.K. Greenlee said, I move that the governing body undertake, in harmony with the scriptures, a full responsibility and authority for the administration and supervision of the Worldwide Association of Jehovah's Witnesses and their activities, and all members and officers and any and all corporations used by Jehovah's Witnesses will act in harmony with and under the direction of this governing body, and this enhanced relationship between the governing body and the corporation go into effect as soon as can be reasonably done without hurt or damage to the kingdom work. These are the motions that where the governing body actually took control of the organization. On the next day, May 1st, 1975, there was a long discussion. In particular, the vice president, who had written the Watchtower articles referred to, objected to the proposals made and to any change in the existing setup, any reduction in the corporation president's authority. This brought to mind and was in harmony with his remarks to me back in 1971 when he thought that Jesus Christ could direct the organization through a single person, down to the time when the New Order came. Why don't we just assume that Jesus Christ is operating through the president? We're not crazy. We're not. He made no comment on the evident contradiction between the presentation made in the Watchtower articles. This is the guy that wrote the articles about, just kind of the irony of it, is that they're changing reality to match their lies. And now the guy that wrote the articles about the lies is objecting to them changing reality to match the lies. They're both statements about the governing body using the corporation as mere instruments, and the three motions made, each of which show that the makers, including the president himself, recognized that the governing body did not at the time supervise the corporations. Discussion went back and forth. A turning point seemed to come when the remarks made by Grant Suter, a crisp-speaking secretary-treasurer of the Society's principal corporations. Different from the comments made till then by those favoring a change, his expressions were quite personal, seemingly the release of a long pent-up feeling about the president, whom he directly named. While discussing the authority structure, he made no specific charges except as regards the right to make a certain change in his personal room that he had requested and had been denied. But he went on, his face became flushed, his jaw muscles flexed, and his words became more intense. He closed with the remark, I say if we're going to be a governing body, then let's get to governing. Haven't been doing any governing till now. Those words hit me hard enough that I'm satisfied that I remember and record them as said. Whether they meant to convey the sense they did is, of course, beyond my knowing, and they may well have been merely a momentary outburst, not indicative of any heartfelt motive. At any rate, they served to make me think very seriously about the matter, but right motivation, and I felt considerable concern that whatever should come, this whole affair might be the result of a sincere desire on the part of all involved to hold more closely to Bible principles and patterns, and not for any other reason. I found the whole session disturbing, mainly because the general spirit did not seem to conform with what one would expect of a Christian body. However, shortly before these last mentioned comments by the Secretary-Treasurer, Nathan Orr evidently reached a decision and made a lengthy statement taken down in shorthand by Milton Henschel, who had made certain suggestions himself and who then acted as Secretary for the body. As recorded in the official minutes of the President's statement, I included these expressions. I think it would be a very good thing for the governing body to follow through along the lines of Brother Henschel has mentioned, and design a program having in mind that what the Watchtower says, that the governing body is the governing body of Jehovah's Witnesses. I'm not going to argue for or against it. In my opinion, it is not necessary. The Watchtower has stated it. Again, we're talking about whether we should change reality to match our lies or not. It will be the governing body who will have the overall guiding power and influence. They will take their responsibility as governing body and direct through different divisions they will set up, and they will have an organization. At the end he said, I make that motion. Somewhat to my surprise, his motion was seconded by F.W. Franz, the vice president. It was adopted unanimously by the body as a whole. The bold language of the Watchtower 4 years previous seemed about to change from mere words into fact. I can't get over it. We're talking about changing reality to match what we already said. From the expressions made by the President, it appeared that a smooth transition lay ahead. That is the picture of harmonious unity the book Jehovah's Witnesses, Proclaimers of God's Kingdom portrays. It was, instead, only a lull preceding the stormiest period of all. In the months that followed, the appointed Committee of Five met with all members of the governing body individually and with 33 other longtime members of the headquarters staff. By far the majority favored a reorganization. The committee drew up detailed proposals for an arrangement of governing body committees to handle different facets of the worldwide activity. Of the 17 governing body members personally interviewed, 11 indicated basic approval. Of the remaining 6, George Gangas, a warm and effervescent Greek, and one of the oldest members of the body, was very uncertain, changeable in his expressions according to the mood of the moment. Charles Feckle, an Eastern European, had been a society director many years before, but had been removed under the charge of having compromised his integrity by the oath he took when obtaining American citizenship. We're not crazy. We're not crazy. This governing body member had to take an oath to get American citizenship and even be here. That makes him suspect. He took that oath. You can't join the YMCA. We can join the UN. He was now among the most recent appointees of the body, and of a very mild nature, rarely shared in the discussion, consistently voting whichever way the majority went, and he had little to say on this issue. Lloyd Barry, a New Zealander who had also a recent addition to the body, had come to Brooklyn after a number of years as branch overseer of Japan, where Witness's activity had seen phenomenal growth. He expressed very strong misgivings about the recommendation, particularly the decentralizing effect it would have as regards to the presidency. In a letter dated September 5, 1975, he characterized the recommended change as revolutionary. Bill Jackson, down-to-earth, unassuming Texan, not as rare as some would make it appear. He spent most of his life at headquarters, and like Barry, he felt that things should be left very much as they were, especially since such good numerical increases had come under the existing administration. The strongest voices of opposition were those of the President and Vice President, the maker and seconder of the motion earlier quoted. They were, in fact, publicly vocal in their opposition. During the period the appointed Committee of Five was interviewing longtime staff members to get their viewpoint, the President's turn to preside at the head of the Bethel table for 1 week came up. For several mornings he used the opportunity to discuss before the 1,200 or more Bethel family members in the several dining rooms, all tied in by sound and television, what he called the investigation going on, the Committee of Five's interviews, saying that some persons favored changing things that had been done a certain way for the whole life of the organization. I don't think we want to make it the way we said it was. He asked again and again, where is there proof that things aren't working well, that a change is needed? He said the investigation was endeavoring to prove the family is bad, but said he was confident that a few complainers would not overwhelm the joy of the majority. He urged us all to have faith in the society. Have faith in the society. Pointing to its many accomplishments, at one point he said with great force and feeling that the changes some wanted would make as to the Bethel family and its work in the organization will be made over my dead body. In the fairness to Nathan Orr, it must be said that undoubtedly he believed the not then existing arrangement was the right one. He knew that the Vice President, the organization's most respected scholar, and the one he relied on to handle scriptural matters, felt that way. Noah was basically an affable person, capable of warmth when he was not in his President's uniform or role. I generally enjoyed my association with him. However, his official position, as is so often the case, did not generally let that side of him be seen, and again, doubtless due to his feelings that the role he carried out was according to God's will, he inclined to react very quickly and forcefully to any apparent infringement of his presidential authority. People learn not to do this. For all that, I seriously doubt Nathan would have gone along with some of the harsh actions that were later come to the collective body that inherited his presidential authority. I can empathize with his feelings and reaction, having served for many years as branch overseer in both Puerto Rico and the Dominican Republic, where I was to be, according to the prevailing organizational viewpoint, the top man in the country, the President's personal representative. My efforts to act in accord with this viewpoint made me constantly aware of position and the need to uphold that position. I found by hard experience, however, that trying to live up to the organizational concept did not contribute to pleasant relations with others, and it made my own life unpleasant. The confrontations it produced were not something I felt at all suited for by nature, and after a while I simply gave up trying to emulate what I had seen at headquarters. My life became much more enjoyable as a result, and I found overall effect far more productive and beneficial. The President's last mentioned words, "over my dead body," nearly proved prophetic. At the time of saying them, he evidently had already developed a malignant tumor on his brain, though this did not become known until after the reorganization was definitely a fait accompli, his completion taking place officially on January 1st, 1976, and Nor's death occurring a year and a half later on June 8th, 1977. The President's quite vocal opposition was matched, perhaps even surpassed, by that of a Vice President. On September 7, 1975, graduation program for the Missionary School of Gilead, attended by the Bethel family members and invited guests, largely relatives and friends of the graduating class, the Vice President gave a talk, a customary feature of each graduation program. Fred Franz had an inimitable, often dramatic, even melodramatic speaking style. What follows is from an exact copy of his talk, but the written words cannot convey the inflections, the spirit, and the flavor, even the occasional sarcasm that came through in the talk itself. His opening words gave a clear indication as to where the talk was headed. Having in mind that a committee duly appointed by the governing body was at that time making a proposal that the training, assignment, and supervision of missionaries be directed by the governing body rather than by the corporations, we may note his opening expression. He began saying, "This class is being sent forth in collaboration with the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society," he said Bible and Tract Society, "of New York, incorporated by the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society of Pennsylvania. Now the question is raised today, what right does the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society have to send missionaries out into the field? None whatsoever. Who authorized the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society of Pennsylvania to send missionaries all around the globe? Now such a challenging question may be raised with an earlier circumstance, and that is based on the fact that the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society was founded by a man who became an evangelizer of world note, one of the most eminent evangelizers of this 20th century, and who especially attained global fame when he made his trip around the world in the year 1912. That man was Charles Taze Russell of Allegheny, Pennsylvania. The focus was clear on the corporation. The governing body was not mentioned. Of course, no one had raised the challenging question he was here describing. The real issue in the governing body was whether the talk he had given 4 years before about the relationship between the body and the corporation was to be taken seriously. So he basically made the argument that the corporation, the dog wags the tail doesn't wag the dog, and then now he's opposing that. He's opposing what he himself said. However, he wanted to say in his distinctive manner, "Now I've wondered about this matter. Maybe you too. Just how did Russell become an evangelizer? Who made him an evangelizer? The various religious establishments of Christendom were in operation. For instance, there was the Anglican Church with its ruling body, and the Protestant Episcopal Church with its ruling body. There was a Methodist Church with its conference. There was also a Presbyterian Church, to which Russell used to belong, with its synod. There was also the Congregational Church, which Russell joined with its central congregation. But none of these controlling organizations was Russell. By none of these controlling organizations was Russell made an evangelizer missionary." So he's arguing that that it would be unchristian. Where all the false churches of Christendom have a governing body, and they're shitheads for that. So he's like arguing against. If the president loses dictatorial control, then we're just like the false religions. We're not crazy. We're not nuts. We are not crazy. We're not crazy. Ah! Without directly or openly referring to the governing body, he had mentioned to introduce it into the discussion indirectly by referring to these ruling bodies under various names. He also could have mentioned the Jesuits, who had an administration bearing this name, governing body. But the point made was that no such governing body had anything to do with it, or exercised any authority toward this founder of the Watchtower Corporation. So because Charles Taze crazy ass wasn't under the direction of a governing body, that means governing bodies are shitheads. Russell was an independent, not subject to any of them. There's some propaganda stunts, eh? Russell was free of a governing body. That's why the president should have dictatorial control of the organization, because all these other organizations that have governing bodies are shitheads. Anyway, page 92.